It wasn't the charge that made my hand shake. It was the missing message. Every morning before work, I sat at the corner of my kitchen table with tea I never finished and opened my banking app. Not because I was wealthy. Because I had spent too many years having too little, and vigilance had become one of the ways I loved myself. Rent, utilities, car insurance, grocery math, the little transfer into savings. The larger transfer back out when life decided to be dramatic again. I liked to know where my money went. I liked the order of it. I liked that numbers, unlike people, could be made to line up. That morning, the numbers didn't line up. There was a transfer at 1:07 a.m., small enough to look harmless, the kind of amount most people would not build a story around. A late-night food order, plus the extra fee. Apps charge for the privilege of pretending convenience is neutral. I would have missed it, except I knew there should have been a text. My bank sent one for everything. Card used, transfer made, unusual login. Even the dull little confirmations nobody reads twice. I opened my messages. Nothing. I checked spam, then deleted threads, then the archived folder, which I only knew existed because Owen once laughed at me for never cleaning up my phone. And there it was. A bank alert, opened, then deleted. 1:08 a.m. account transfer approved. I stared at it for a long time, as if the wording might rearrange itself into an explanation. That did not include my own bed, my own apartment, my own sleeping body on the other side of that hour. Owen was still asleep, one arm thrown over his face, blanket shoved to his waist, the posture of a person resting inside complete innocence. For a minute, I did what women are trained to do when evidence lands before emotion is ready. I minimized. Maybe he had meant to wake me. Maybe his phone had died. Maybe he moved the text by accident. Maybe the transfer was for something else. Maybe there was a version of this that would let me keep breakfast calm. Then I looked at the thread again. Opened. Deleted. Not missed. Managed. That was the part one could not make ordinary. If he had shaken my shoulder at 1 a.m. and said, "Hey, I'm starving, my card's locked, can I use yours?" I would have said yes so fast. He would have been annoyed by how noble I made him feel. I would have paid for the food, handed him napkins, stolen half his fries, and gone back to sleep. It was never about the money. People say that sentence too easily, as if it makes you sound evolved. But sometimes it is true in the most devastating way. When it isn't about the money, it is about what someone believed would happen if they asked, and what they chose to do instead. Owen and I had been together 4 years and 8 months, which is long enough for your toothbrushes to stop looking romantic and start looking administrative. Long enough to know each other's coffee orders, migraine weather, parental weak spots, and the exact tone of voice that means, "I'm not angry, I just don't want to fight in public." He knew my phone passcode, I knew his. He had my spare key. I had let him reorganize the shelf above my stove because he said my spice system made no sense. Our lives had folded together in 100 practical ways. That is how it happens. Not all at once. Not in vows. In chargers, receipts, laundry soap, mail with both names on it. Shared life has a texture. It can feel so much like safety that you stop noticing how much of it depends on respect. Owen was not the kind of man who announced himself as controlling. He had no speeches about obedience, no dramatic rages, no rules taped to the refrigerator. If anyone had asked me the week before whether I trusted him, I would have said yes with the easy confidence of someone who thinks danger always arrives noisily. What I would have struggled to explain, if someone had pressed me, was how often he treated my things as already half his. Not in ways large enough to justify alarm. That was his talent. He borrowed my charger, then left it at work. He used my shampoo, then joked that expensive products should at least make him prettier. He took cash from the ceramic bowl near the door and called it house money, even when I was the one refilling it. He ate leftovers I had packed for lunch and said, "I thought you weren't that attached to them." Each thing, on its own, was survivable. Annoying. Lightly selfish. Nothing worth creating a scene over. And because women are taught to reserve outrage for only the most camera-ready betrayals, I kept rounding his behavior down. By the time you realize someone has been shaving the edges off your boundaries for months, it can be difficult to point at the exact place the room changed shape. I set my phone on the table and made toast I didn't want. The bread blackened on one side because I forgot to watch it. I scraped the burnt edge over the sink, hearing him move in the bedroom. A drawer. A cough. The bathroom tap. Ordinary sounds, which somehow made me angrier. When he came into the kitchen, he kissed my cheek and opened the fridge. "We need eggs," he said. I looked at him. Really looked. The sleep creased beside his mouth. The softness of a man walking into a room he assumes is still his. "Did you use my account last night?" He shut the fridge, not hard, but with enough pause between motion and answer that my body knew before my mind did. "For food?" he said. "Yeah." My card kept glitching. "Not, I'm sorry. Not, I meant to tell you. Not, I didn't want to wake you. Just a clarification. As if the category of purchase might settle the ethics. Why did you delete the bank text?" That made him look at me fully, not guilty, annoyed. "I didn't want you freaking out over a late-night charge. There are sentences that become more insulting the longer you sit with them." That was one. Because hidden inside it was a complete theory of me. I was not a person entitled to know what happened in my own account. I was a volatile weather system he had responsibly managed. "So you knew it would bother me," he exhaled, the performance sigh of a man already filing himself under reasonable. "Mara, come on, it was just food." "I was going to mention it." I hated how quickly my voice started, trying to sound calm. Women do this too. We are most measured when someone is treating us like we are irrational. "But you didn't mention it. You used my phone, opened a bank alert, and deleted it." He leaned back against the counter. "You're making it sound criminal." That word floated between us like it had arrived from somewhere else. He said it half laughing, trying to reduce me with scale. "Criminal? Really? Over dumplings and noodles? I should tell you this. When you are decent, you spend an astonishing amount of time trying not to make other people feel accused for what they actually did. So instead of saying, yes, it does sound criminal, because people who have permission do not need to hide their tracks, I said, I'm upset that you did it behind my back." He crossed his arms. "Behind your back? I was literally next to you in bed." Sometimes contempt arrives wearing wordplay. I laughed once. A sharp, unbelieving sound. That's your defense? My defense is that this is nothing. Nothing. That was another one. Not wrong, nothing. Not a choice, nothing. Not a violation, nothing. Just a woman, again, being asked to swallow the version of reality that protects a man from the discomfort of being accurately described. I wish I could say I became majestic right then. I wish I could say I set down my mug, spoke one perfect sentence, and watched clarity fill the room. But betrayal is often humiliating before it is empowering. I started explaining myself. That tired, over-detailed, almost pleading explanation people give when they can feel their boundaries slipping and hope precision will save them. If you had asked, I would have said yes. If you had told me this morning, I would still have been annoyed, but not like this. It's the deleting it. It's you deciding I didn't get to know. It's you treating my account like something you can use, and then curate the evidence of. He shook his head. You always escalate. That's the problem. Everything has to mean something bigger. There it was, the oldest trick in the room. Not I crossed a line. But your interpretation is the real offense. I had heard versions of that sentence before. When he forgot to pay me back for concert tickets. When he promised to replace the headphones his brother took and lost. When he volunteered my car for his cousin's airport run before asking me. Always the same structure. Small trespass. Then irritation that I insisted on naming it. Memory is strange. It does not always arrive chronologically. Sometimes it lights up by pattern. Standing in that kitchen watching him tell me I was exaggerating, I suddenly remembered dozens of tiny scenes I had filed under flexibility. The moving day when he used my emergency credit card for beer and pizza for his friends, then said, we were all helping you too. The weekend trip when he booked the hotel on my rewards account, because I had better points, then forgot to send his half for 3 weeks and sulked when I reminded him. The grocery run when he added things to the cart, laughed that I was the one with the budgeting spreadsheet, and kissed my forehead like charm was a currency. None of those memories felt catastrophic at the time. Together they formed a grammar. I was the stable one, the organized one, the one with good credit, a calendar, a backup plan, and enough love that he could keep pretending my competence was communal property. There is a special loneliness in realizing someone admires in you what they also feel entitled to consume. I said, "This isn't about one order." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's exactly what I mean. You can never let one thing be one thing. Because he thought complexity belonged to him, he could hide, justify, reframe, and contextualize. I was only allowed to react at the scale most convenient to his innocence. I looked toward the sink because I could feel tears building, and I knew if he saw them, he would treat them as evidence that I was impossible. Not all crying is weakness. But some men have trained themselves so thoroughly that any visible hurt becomes, to them, a woman losing the argument. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" I asked. He shrugged. "I thought it wasn't worth turning into this." That answer did something final to me. Not because it was the cruelest thing he could have said. Because it was the plainest. He had not made a panicked mistake. He had made a calculation. He believed the inconvenience to him of asking permission was greater than the disrespect to me of discovering I had been managed. And deeper than that, he believed my eventual discomfort was a logistics problem, not a moral one. I went quiet. People think silence means uncertainty. Sometimes silence is the sound of a structure collapsing cleanly. He moved toward me then, perhaps sensing too late that his usual strategies were failing. "Babe," he said, softer now. "I said I was going to tell you." I stepped back. "After what?" "After I thanked you for breakfast you bought with my money?" He flinched. Just slightly. It was the first time I had landed the sentence without cushioning it for him. "You're twisting this." "Am I?" I picked up my phone and held the screen where he could see it, the deleted message, the timestamp, the account name. So little proof, and yet enough. You used my account, you covered it up. And now you're angry that I'm using the right words. His face changed then. Harder. Not explosive. Worse. Offended. "If that's really how you see me," he said, "maybe we have bigger problems." I almost laughed again. There is no theater quite like someone staging a wounded identity crisis, because you described their behavior accurately. Maybe we do, I thought. Maybe the bigger problem is that you keep waiting for me to choose peace over truth. But I did not say that. Not yet. Instead, I went into the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in both hands. I could hear cupboards opening, shoes on the floor, his muttered voice as he took a call or recorded a note or narrated himself back into righteousness. I texted my sister. "Can I ask you something weird? If someone used your bank account, deleted the alert, and then said you were overreacting, what would you call that?" She responded in under a minute. "I would call it stealing, then I would call my bank." There are moments when clarity enters your body, like cold water. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just unmistakable. Stealing. I had been avoiding the word because it felt too severe for a breakfast order. But severity is not measured only by dollar amount. It is measured by consent, by concealment, by the private logic of, what belongs to you is available to me if I can keep the story small enough. I called the bank first. My voice was so calm that the fraud representative probably assumed I was discussing somebody halfway across the country. I asked about freezing transfers, changing passcodes, requiring additional verification. I asked whether deleted text alerts could be restored to record. I asked practical questions, which is how grief dresses itself when it wants to remain employable. Then I changed every password he might know: email, banking, credit cards, delivery apps, phone passcode, even the streaming service, which felt petty until I realized pettiness had nothing to do with it. I was closing doors. That is not the same thing. When I came back into the kitchen, he was scrolling on the couch, performing indifference so aggressively it almost shook. "Seriously?" he said, seeing the bank on speaker notes in my hand. "You called them?" "Yes." "Over one food order?" There it was again, his desperate little shrinking machine. One order, one text, one misunderstanding, one overreaction, as if repetition could flatten principle. "No," I said. "Over the fact that you thought you could do it, hide it, and then train me to feel stupid for caring." He stood up. "Train you? Mara, you sound insane right now." That word should not surprise women anymore. And yet it still does. Not because it is original, because it is often deployed at the exact moment we become hardest to manipulate. I looked at him and something inside me, something old and eager to placate, finally got tired. "I think you should go home tonight," he stared. "You're kicking me out? I'm asking for space from someone who accessed my account, used my phone, and deleted evidence. If you need me to phrase it more gently, I can't." He tried 3 more versions before noon. The minimization version, the self-pity version, the practical version. Where am I supposed to go? The reverse accusation version. "You've invaded my privacy before too," though what he meant was that I had once answered his mother's call when his hands were full while we were driving. By afternoon, he switched to tenderness. That nearly worked, which is how I knew I needed distance. He texted, "I never wanted to hurt you. I was embarrassed I didn't have enough in checking. I didn't want you to think less of me." I read it 3 times. Then a 4th. Because the saddest lies are often mostly true. Maybe he had been embarrassed. Maybe he had felt small. Maybe using my account had been easier than admitting, at 1 a.m, that he was out of money. But embarrassment explains a choice. It does not excuse it. And if he had truly feared, I would think less of him for asking. What did it say that he preferred risking my trust over risking his pride? I did not answer right away. I spent the evening doing the dull, uncharming work of reclaiming a life, collecting chargers, separating laundry, putting his mail in a paper bag, wiping the bathroom shelf clean where his shaving cream had left a pale ring. People rarely talk about this part, the logistics of disillusionment. The way heartbreak can look like label makers, small boxes, and updated autopay settings. At 9, I finally replied, "If you were embarrassed, you could have asked. If you were sorry, you would have started there. What I can't get past is that you hid it, and then made my reaction the problem. I need time, and I need you to understand that this is not small to me." He sent back a long message about stress, masculinity, how hard the past few months had been, how I sometimes made finances feel tense, how he hadn't realized I would take it this way. That was when I saw the final shape of it, not because every point was false. Stress had been real, money had been tight. I did care about budgeting, but every explanation he offered still centered him as the emotional authority on what his trespass was allowed to mean. He wanted context to erase impact. He wanted complexity without accountability. He wanted forgiveness before recognition. And maybe, if he had not deleted the message, we would have had a very different conversation. Maybe I would have sympathized, transferred more money, built him a gentler runway into honesty. But there is no tenderness owed to concealment. That was the lesson. That was the gift inside the insult. A missing text taught me what years of affection had blurred. Trust is not proven when someone loves you in the easy categories. It is proven in whether they protect your dignity when convenience points the other way. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. The apartment sounded enormous. No extra breathing, no shower running, no cabinet doors opened by someone else's hands. I made tea, sat at the table, opened my banking app. Everything lined up. The number in my account was a little lower than it had been 2 days before. But for the first time in months, my life did not feel quietly accessible to someone who kept calling trespass love. That is a kind of wealth, too. I wish I could tell you that I left him immediately, that I never doubted myself again, that one hard morning cured me forever of the instinct to translate disrespect into stress, fear, or male fragility. Real life is messier. We talked again, then again. He apologized better once the shock set in. He admitted the deleted message was the part he could not defend. He said he had gotten used to thinking of us as a unit. And somewhere inside that, he stopped distinguishing between closeness and permission. That sentence was the nearest he came to telling the truth, because that was exactly the danger. Not hunger, not one transfer. The belief that intimacy itself was a permanent yes. I told him something I think I had been learning for years without saying aloud. Access is not consent. Familiarity is not consent. Love is not consent. A shared bed, a shared grocery list, a shared future, a shared emergency contact form. None of it becomes a master key, he cried then. That surprised him. Not me. People often cry when the story they told about themselves can no longer survive contact with the facts. I did not comfort him. That surprised me. I had spent so much of my adult life believing goodness meant immediate soothing. But sometimes goodness looks like staying still long enough for truth to finish its sentence. In the weeks after, friends asked versions of the same question. Wasn't it just a small amount? Hadn't we been together a long time? Was this really the hill? I learned to answer them plainly. No, it was not about the amount. Yes, we had been together a long time. And that was exactly why it mattered. Because when someone has had years to learn how to handle your trust, and they still choose concealment over honesty, the size of the transaction is not the point. The point is what they believe love will let them get away with. Some stories end with fireworks. Mine ended with settings. New passwords, a different lock screen, fewer linked accounts, an apartment that became legible again. And one sentence I keep like a stone in my pocket now. Smooth from use. The first betrayal is often not the taking. It is the confidence that you will be persuaded not to call it that. If there is a mercy in growing older, it may be this. I no longer think respect has to arrive loudly to count. I no longer believe I need a spectacular injury before I am allowed to step back. Sometimes all you get is a deleted message, a man who swears you are dramatic, and the brief, terrible clarity of seeing that he was counting on your love more than he was honoring it. That is enough. It should be enough. It was enough for me.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.